Oh, hello. Today we're going to try and answer the question, what's coming next from Games Workshop? So, the thing that's brought this on, and the thing that's news that I've not really heard many other people talk about, there was a preview show that was scheduled for the start of next month to happen during Gen Con. And they never announced this on Warhammer Community, but we knew about it because they'd announced it on the Gen Con website. You could book tickets to go to the reveal. Now, for whatever reason, the Gen Con show's been cancelled. If you find the link to the page where it was, where you could buy the tickets to go to the event, you greeted with this: the event is sold out, but then underneath it says, "We're sorry, the event has been cancelled." And so apparently that time has been cancelled. Don't really know why. If anybody's following Gen Con more closely and has seen any kind of statement or explanation from the organisers, I mean, they must be gutted, right? They have something sorted out to be in their convention. It seems as if Games Workshop have probably cancelled it at the last minute. So that's one thing. That's interesting. Does that mean that the release schedule is going to slow down? That they don't want to show stuff off? Or were they not happy with the way they were going to do it at Gen Con? Are they going to do something online only at the same time? Don't know. Maybe they have trouble getting the people, the community team members, to actually go out to the US. Don't know. So the next preview event we know about is the Nova Open on the 28th of August. Now that is a long time to go without a preview show. So maybe they're going to do like an online only preview, maybe later this month, early August, don't know. What I thought I would do with the rest of this video is try and round up some of all the things we sort of know is coming, all the rumours that I've heard anyway, for all their different games, including Kill Team, but all their games, and try and sort of get our heads around the timeline of Games Workshop releases that we are expecting over this summer period, traditionally a pretty good period for Games Workshop, okay? So let's just remind ourselves, I'm in love with this graphic I made ages ago of the landscape of Games Workshop games. So when I'm talking about the Games Workshop games, okay, these are the games that they still sell according to their website, okay? So you've got the 4 games in the middle there that are both fully Warhammer and fully competitive. Then you've got the sort of less competitive Warhammer games, Legions Imperialis, Warhammer the Horus Heresy, the Old World. Now, Warcry might be classed as competitive these days, because it did get a MetaWatch article, right? And then you've got the games that are not really Warhammer, so Blood Bowl, Titanicus, Middle-earth, Necromunda. So, let's go through each of these in turn and talk about what we know and what we think we know about what's coming out next. We're going to start with the current hotness, Age of Sigmar, okay? So, Skaven Tide, unless you've been living under a rock, Skaven Tide releases on Saturday. The men who read books have already done unboxings and things like that. That's all out there. Everyone knows precisely what's in this. And even some of you who order from friendly local gaming stores that don't fastidiously observe the official street date may have copies of this now already as well. Now, we sort of know what's next. Skaven and Stormcast are going to get I've written army box. I mean an army book each. They're going to get army books, new ranges. But just hold on, because this stuff might take some time. So just remember, Leviathan, that's the 40k equivalent of Skaven Tide, the 10th edition launch box, came out on the 24th of June. Codex Tyranids did not come out until the 9th of September. Okay? And remember as well that Codex came out first, Space Marines came out a little bit later, as a result of the voting mechanism that was on the slips inside the copies of Leviathan. Now they're doing the same thing, the same voting mechanism with Skaven Tide, so we're probably in for 2 months of Age of Sigmar being pretty quiet, and letting us digest and get used to the Index edition before they start to drop the first army books on us, if they follow the same pattern they followed with the release of 10th edition 40k. I think that's a pretty good thing. I mean, actually, if they've gone to the trouble of making a rule set for, Index Stormcast and Index Skaven, that should at least have a couple of months worth of run. Especially if people are going to go out and buy the cards. Like, don't buy the cards for Skaven or Stormcast unless you're very comfortable with something you buy being obsolete within about 2 months, I would say. But if people do, it's nice that at least it doesn't become obsolete like within 2 weeks. Now, what I would expect for the Age of Sigmar within the next 2 months is that we're probably going to get the same sort of trio of starter sets that are the different parts of Skaven Tide pulled out piecemeal and sold at different price points. We've already kind of seen this. We've seen that all of the spearhead stuff, so the boards, the cards, and the book, that's been pulled out and sold as a separate set. Okay, you can buy the core rules as a separate set. You can buy the General's Handbook rather than it being in card form. You can get the General's Handbook in like little book form as a separate object. If you want most of this stuff, buying Skaven Tide is still probably the best deal for you, but it is there separately for you. And I might expect, depending on how many copies of Skaven Tide they still have, because that's a thing, it's not been selling great, right? I believe it's still in stock at Element Games. They may or may not push out a kind of 3 tiers of starter set thing for Age of Sigmar, but I think they probably will anyway, because they must have those things already made up in the warehouse and need to get rid of them, right? But as weird as it sounds, I'm not expecting any more big miniatures releases for Age of Sigmar for about 2 more months. We'll probably get hype for the new Skaven and the new Stormcast before then, but I'm not expecting a release for another 2 months, just because I'm expecting it to follow the same rhythm as 40k did, right? And we'll have 2 months of playing with the index rules. The focus is very much going to be on Skaven Tide and not the rest of the new edition. What about 40k? Well, we know basically nothing about 40k. The only official thing we've had confirmed is that we're expecting another codex, and it was redacted. Now, this is now heavily rumoured by Valrak to be Codex Imperial Agents. And I'm just going to run through what we know, because we know a fair bit about Codex Imperial Agents. I'm going to run through what we think we know about Codex Imperial Agents. So apparently, it's going to come with 3 launch boxes, 3 FOMO boxes, themed around Xenos, Malleus, and Hereticus. Okay? It's going to have a new plastic Inquisitor Cotiers, and we've got some good details on what that actually looks like. Apparently, he's going to be kind of looking stoic with his hammer on the ground, his hand resting on the pommel of his hammer, and his cyber eagle flying around him in some way as he kind of stares off into the imagined middle distance. We also have heard a rumour of the new plastic assassins. Now, this could be one of 3 things. It could be plastic death cult assassins, the models that were previously in the Sisters book, but have been in the Inquisition books, Demon Hunters and Witch Hunters of old, right? And were kind of more Inquisition things to begin with that kind of got grandfathered into being a Sisters thing. We could be getting plastic death cult assassins, so that's kind of the traditionally it's the ladies in I mean, it looks a lot like PVC fetish gear, because that's what John Blanche likes, with swords, and that's, but that honestly they could reimagine, and they may well choose to, death cult assassins, because the concept of death cult assassins is not really that they are a uniform group with a with a uniform with a costume. It's that it just refers to various like killers recruited from various different cults in the Imperium that can all look really diverse, and it just so happens that the metal models that we're familiar with are based on 2 particular named characters from the 54mm scale Inquisitor game that were designed based on sketches done by John Blanche. You know, a fair way away. Now, they may still... personally, right, I'm a big fan of John Blanche, right? I like that design. I'm not hoping it goes away or anything, but I'm just preparing the ground. It could go away. They could reimagine Death Cult Assassins as a new idea. So you could get this lower tier of more generic assassin. That's possible. Or we could be in for a reimagining of the Temple Assassins. So we could get brand new, just straight up replacement sculpts, right? For the Eversaw, the Vindicare, the Klexus, the Callous Assassin that we know and love. We could get new temples, you know. If you follow Horus Heresy, there are other assassin temples, and the Horus Heresy have got models for them, like the Venenum Temple and all this sort of stuff, so that's possible as well. But the only rumor we've actually heard is new plastic assassins, and no real explanation of what that means. Now, more recently, we have heard again from this is all from Valrak. We have heard again that the Death Watch. We thought it might be the case for a long time. And we're hearing now the Death Watch have definitely been fully absorbed into this book. So I'm expecting certainly the Xenos launch box will have a lot of Death Watch stuff in the old Death Watch stuff that they want to shift. Death Watch are in a really interesting place. I know Death Watch players are going to be upset, but there's really no reason to be upset, because the way this book's going to work, it's a book of ally. I'm sure you will be able to run them from this book, but it's an ally book, right? Death Watch only really had 3 kits. Like, there was a character, the Death Watch squad, and the flyer, right? And then there was the weird Kill Team Cassius with the bike and the Terminator and that, and that's it. Right, so you'll be able to buy this book, use those units, and then ally them with, presumably, a Codex Space Marines army, and then your Death Watch army that you've collected and converted will still be, I'm hoping, I would assume, fully playable. Yeah, it's annoying to have to go out and buy an extra book to do that, but I don't think your Death Watch army will actually be unusable. It'll just be a Space Marine army with Death Watch allies taken from Codex Imperial Agents to represent their unique data sheets, right? Now, the other interesting thing that I've heard is apparently the detachments in this book. There's Grey Knights and Sisters. Sisters obviously not, because they've got their own codex, but Grey Knights apparently also not absorbed into this book. But there is going to be 2 of the detachments that talk specifically about Grey Knights and Sisters of Battle being used alongside the Imperial Agents stuff. So the idea is, Grey Knights, Sisters of Battle, and Death Watch, for those who don't know the sort of the lore from earlier on, they are referred to as the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos, the Ordo Malleus, and the Ordo Hereticus. So in other words, the Ordo Xenos can, it presses the bat signal, and the Death Watch pretty much have to show up to help them, right? The Ordo Malleus, same thing with the Grey Knights, and the Ordo Hereticus, the same thing with the Sisters. Now, that's not to say that all 3 of those forces can't fight independently without an Inquisitor, but it just is there to say that they have bonds and oaths to the Inquisition, that they will show up when an Inquisitor says, hey, we need you for this. So apparently 2 of the detachments are going to be about that. I would assume that another detachment is probably themed around the Death Watch. They're going to get at least 1 Death Watch themed detachment, with possibly, that's where all your ways of giving you special ammunition to your things that you've allied in from Codex Space Marines might be. At a guess, right? So I'm really looking, as a Sisters player, I'm really looking forward to this book. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be a home for things like Adeptus Arbites, the Imperial Navy breaches, all the different little bits that we've seen releasing for Kill Team are going to get a home here. It'd be interesting to get the Rogue Traders and the Star Striders, and it's going to be a book. I'm sure it will make some really interesting army lists by itself, but it's also going to have a real eye on being a source of allies for other Imperial armies in 40k. And I'm really excited to see what it entails, because I don't really have a clear idea. For example, you've got your 3 launch boxes. I'm not sure. Okay, so the Death Watch are going to be in the box. So we stick Death Watch into the into the Ordo Xenos box. What are we doing with the Malleus and the Hereticus box? They could put in some new characters and stuff, and then they could sell an Ordo Hereticus launch box that pulled things in from the Sisters of Battle and went, hey, look, this is an army that allies, so you have to buy, if you buy this FOMO box, you get this stuff, which is from this other army. They could do the same with the Malleus box and the Grey Knights. Like, that's a possibility, But I would think for the launch box for a Codex, they'd want to fill it exclusively with units for that Codex. But then again, in fairness, and we're going to talk about Blood Angels in a second, right? The Blood Angels launch box, allegedly, contains a Brutalis Dreadnought and Jump Intercessors. So would it really be that different? Let's just, for argument's sake, if there was, if they do this weird thing with 3 launch boxes, and the Xenos one and the Malleus, the Hereticus and the Malleus one contained units from other factions. I don't know. I think that's possible. Otherwise, I can't. I have one more theory that I'm going to talk about on the next slide. But otherwise, I can't quite see how these boxes are slot together. Because I'm sure they can't just be, a plastic inquisitor and pile of assassins and there's your, and jobs are good on. Or, you could do one with like 2 or 3 squads of Arbites. Maybe the Hereticus box is going to be like an inquisitor and a big pile of Arbites. That's a thing. Maybe the Malleus box uses the inquisitorial, if it's themed around, because Malleus is where you're going to find Coziers. Coziers is famous for his his spy networks. Maybe the Malleus box is going to be like Coziers and like a bunch of the Inquisition kill teams, right? A bunch of those sprues. So you have like your sort of traditional looking like Inquisitor henchman type army. But it's going to be a really interesting one to properly see what they're doing for it. Because even though we know quite a lot of information, it's really unclear still to me, like, what this army is going to actually look like. Right? One thing I am going to call, and this hasn't been rumoured, I'm just going to call it because I think it's spot on. This piece of artwork, I think that's going to be the Codex cover. Because if they're launching it with a new plastic quotiers, then and they've got this artwork here from back in the day. This is the art from the Codex Demon Hunters, I believe, and it features coziers front and centre, and it's a classic piece of artwork. And I wonder if they'll launch that. Now, I would love them to do. They won't. I would love them to do the FOMO boxes with 3 different codexes in, and if you get the Malleus box, you get this codex cover, and if you get the Hereticus box, you get the classic. It's front and center above my desk. The classic Games Workshop Witch Hunters codex art, where you've got the sister in the background, the Inquisitor front and center with the flame pistol just burning the flame in whatever out of some poor unfortunate sword in the foreground. And then I guess the Xenos book can have one of the Deathwatch codex covers of old, right? But I don't think they're going to be the kind of launch boxes that come with the codex. I don't know either way. We know that Games Workshop does 2 kinds of launch box, right? Usually the ones they're going to have a codex in, like Kroot, are all new models, and nothing I'm hearing. But then this is going to be a weird release because they're not just getting a book and cotiers, they're getting a book and 3 launch boxes and new plastic assassins. So it's all still really up in the air. But I think if they only do 1 codex, they may well recycle this Demon Hunters codex art, and I think that's pretty cool art, to be fair. Right, so my gushing about the Imperial Agents, which I'm obviously excited for, aside, I think the next codex after that is apparently Blood Angels. Now, I would just sign a word of caution here. This is the next codex that Valrak is talking about. I leave room for the idea that in between Imperial Agents and Blood Angels, they're going to want to sneak out a couple of codexes that are like, here's your codex, here's one model with something, off you go. Like, this sounds like a really big release now coming up. So, if you think Imperial Agents is like a medium release, which is a weird thing for our current like understanding of 40k, but it does feel like a medium release. Blood Angels is clearly a big release. So we're apparently getting new plastic Sanguinary Guard. They're not going to have the giant wings that we're used to seeing from Sanguinary Guard. They're going to have the little stylized wings. It was interesting to me that Lore Masters said that they were doing a Lore Masters episode all about Sanguinary Guard this week. Interesting. New plastic Lamates model, new plastic Astrath the Grim model. The FOMO box, the launch box, is going to be Death Company themed, apparently with a Brutalis Dreadnought, the new plastic Lamates probably locked into that box, right? The Jump Intercessors, and like Deathwing upgrade sprue. Not sure if it's a new Deathwing upgrade sprue or an existing Deathwing upgrade sprue to enable you to turn your Jump Intercessors into Jumpy Deathwing. Okay. Apparently there's a new Blood Angels captain, which I remember Valrak said that the captain had like sculpted muscles on the armor, which is quite a common Blood Angels aesthetic. Not sure if it's going to be a captain on foot or a jump captain. Probably a captain on foot, right? And then Valrak at one point said there was going to be a new Sanguinary Priest, and then he sort of rode back on the idea that maybe there's not going to be a new Sanguinary Priest, so that's a bit more up in the air. And then apparently the new Combat Patrol has the new Captain in and the new Sanguinary Guard and also some Assault Intercessors. Now, the thing that alarms me about this release is that's a lot of stuff. You know, Lamartes is going to be locked in the FOMO box. You miss out on the FOMO box, you don't get Lamartes for a long time. The Combat Patrol, again, with 2 new releases in, the new Captain and the Sanguinary Guard, how long is it going to be before they're released individually? Or how long are they going to sit in the FOMO box? So if you're an established Blood Angels player, and I've got a friend who is an established Blood Angels player, so I'd love to know what he thinks about all this. Are you just buying both of those giant boxes and then going, well, I mean, this can go on the pile of the other 57 Assault Intercessors that I already own because I play Blood Angels, right, who like combat. And presumably you may also have had your fill of Brutalis Dreadnoughts and Jump Intercessors. I know these are the things I would own if I played Blood Angels, right? I would have gotten a Brutalis Dreadnought the minute it came out, because it's very, very Blood Angels. It's the spiritual successor, if you will, to the Furioso Dreadnought. So I could see them doing a really unsatisfying release for this, where it's all this new stuff, but it's Codex, Combat Patrol, Launch Box, Asterath Clan Pack, and then like, oh yeah, we'll release some of the new stuff from the Launch Box and the Combat Patrol eventually when we can be bothered, right? A little bit unsatisfying, potentially. The FOMO box will almost certainly work that way. That's not new. So if you want that Lamartes, that's what you're going to have to go for. But the fact that the Combat Patrol might also paywall a couple of the new releases, that would be a new thing. That doesn't usually happen. So that will be interesting for that release. We'll see when it comes, if it comes. This is all rumours and therefore may not be true. And the redacted codex may yet be something else like Emperor's Children, right? We just don't know. But this is what we hear, and it's what I have chosen to believe. And then we got Kill Teams, a Kill Team channel. I keep reminding people, it's a Kill Team channel. We just don't talk about Kill Team very often at the moment. Now, officially we know nothing. It has been heavily rumoured in excruciating detail that we are getting Jump Pack Scions versus Vespid with new City Fight themed Kill Team terrain to kick off the new editions. I've made previous videos about this where I may have gone into a little bit more detail, okay, but I'm going to try and recap as much of that detail as I can for you now. The persistent rumour is that this is the new City Fight terrain. I don't like calling it City Fight. Glass Half Dead really loves City Fight and has really run with calling it City Fight, so that's what it's kind of named as in my head. But Ruins, right? Same thing, right? But I think it's going to be, and a lot of people think it's going to be, this is going to be the launch of a new terrain ecosystem for 40k as well as Kill Team. So, for those of you that don't play 40k, who are here for the skirmish stuff, the Kill Team primarily, right, which is probably most of you, in 40k, and I've said this before, but in case you didn't catch it last time, if you have a Ruin, the Ruin will have, I'm just going to use my wet palette here as an example, the Ruin will have a square footprint that the actual building itself will sit on, right, and if the Ruin is wholly between you and your opponent, right, they're obscured, so you can't shoot through a Ruin. As soon as somebody enters the Ruin, they gain the benefit of cover, which in the case of 40k is like plus +1 to your armor if you're being shot by a weapon that has -1 or more AP to a maximum of 3 up. Like, it's quite contrived, but the benefit of cover for being in the Ruin, right? But you can be shot, but you can shoot out, right? Now, that would actually work really well as an idea for Kill Team because it meshes with what we already have. So line of sight is still going to be the same. Whether something is visible is still going to be the same in my imagining of the way it would work. So visibility is still the same. You would draw your true line of sight point. Can I reach any point on your model from any point on my base? And then what we would do is for obscuring, it would simply be, is the piece of obscuring terrain wholly between you and your target? And if it is, that's it. So you can be right up against it, touching it, in base-to-base contact with it, or a millimetre off base-to-base, let's say. It still is obscuring as long as neither party is in it. Right? And then as soon as somebody is in it, they're not obscured by it, but they gain the benefit for cover, which for Kill Team I imagine would say the same, retain a defense dice. I think that would be so much simpler. It would help Kill Team be more... I know Kill Team doesn't really concern itself with this, but it would help Kill Team to be more of a feed into 40k. Obviously, what cover did, the benefit of cover, would be mechanically different in both games, but how you achieved cover would not be mechanically different, right? So I could think that would work for Ruins. Now, obviously, you've got to think about, well, how are things like barricades going to work? You want other terrain pieces other than Ruins, but I would suggest you simply say with light terrain, you just, so your Ruins with bases would replace your heavy terrain pieces, and with light terrain you would simply say, look, if it crosses the thing, then they get the benefit of cover if they're within an inch. You keep that being the rule. It's only really the heavy terrain and the obscuring thing, and what we're trying to do here is to get rid of that zone of death. To get rid of that thing where you are 1.5 inches away from a piece of terrain and therefore derive no benefit from it because it makes no sense. Yeah? So I think that's likely, which means that we're going to get... I am imagining, right, if you've watched any professional 40k players, and you can go and look on anywhere... they put, of different kinds, they put the terrain, often the official Games Workshop terrain, but they put it on a base. So I wonder if we're going to get the new edition of Kill Team Ruins that actually have a base that you glue the ruin and that has a set size, right? And then that would really help them with maps as well. Because they can say this is Ruin A, this goes here, Ruin B goes here, Ruin C goes here. And then they could, if they wanted to, I'm not saying they will, they could go back to the model of Season 1 and Season 2, where you buy a big box and it could just be like Season 2, you get the same terrain kit 4 times over the course of the year, and you're effectively doing like a 2,000 points of 40k part works, right, to get your full table that you would need to play a tournament game of 40k. Now, that's going to annoy people who are Kill Team purists, who don't want to buy 4 boxes of the same terrain, but at least it has more utility than when we bought 4 boxes with the same Into the Dark terrain. Boo, right? Because no one ever had a use for 4 sets. For 40k, yes, 2 sets, but not 4. But the other good thing in the traditional Games Workshop point of view is it gets terrain out there, because people go, oh, I've got too many sets, I'll put it on eBay, I'll give it to a local club, I'll give it to a local school, I'll give it to a local library, and it gets the official terrain out there, and then they will quietly drop all their other official terrain, I speculate, right? Which, I can sense a lot of people being frustrated because they've got their painted Octarius terrain. Respectfully, you've got 3 years of joy out of that Octarius terrain. Is it really the worst thing if it gets replaced with something better, right? And if you really want to, I'm sure you could put your Octarius buildings, just like the 40k players are doing now. If you want to, you'll be able to convert the terrain you have with a little bit of hobby, if this is what happens, into terrain that you'd need for the new system. So that's what I think is going to happen there. I also just wanted to flag up a possibility. I've illustrated this idea with the Drop Force Imperator box, because Jump Scions, Drop Force Imperator, they're Scions, they kind of, I don't know, and they've... Is it possible, I don't know how probable this is, if Deathwatch had been absorbed into Imperial Agents, what about the Scions? Could the Tempestus Scions go wholesale into Imperial Agents? It's like 1 box and 1 vehicle, right? And they'd only take 1 version of the vehicle away from the Guard, because the vehicle makes the Scion version, the Torx Prime and the regular Torx. Like, there's not a huge range, and of course then these new jump troops. And Guard players would still be able to use them, just like the Deathwatch players could. They'd have to buy a second book, and I understand that sucks a little bit, but they're probably going to pirate it anyway, because rules, right? But I think that would make sense, and it would provide them with something else where they can actually make... Because I'm really struggling with how... I mean, unless it's going to be Deathwatch, how you make it so that Imperial Agents can be your only book that you use. And they lack kind of basic troops. And one way of solving that problem would be to take the Scions and put them in there, which would kind of make sense of why we're getting a new Scion unit as well to tie the releases together, which is something they like to do. Because it's possible, people have said, right, whispers in my ear, that maybe the whole theme around this new edition of Kill Team is Inquisition-y shenanigans, right? And that's its vibe, and it very much ties in with the 40k, and because of course Imperial Agents book ties in with greater bits of the 40k lore, where Cortez is currently doing things. It's just a thought, just a thought. Let's move on. Let's move away from 40k and onto something else. Underworlds. I'm pretty sure Underworlds is dying, is dead, is not a thing we need to concern ourselves with anymore. So the game still exists on Warhammer.com. Still buy it. But loads of the teams from Season 1 were removed from sale quite recently, and quite notably, to the gnashing of teeth from many. Lots of the data sheets that you can use in Age of Sigmar have just recently moved to Legends. There's my whole theory about how Games Workshop only really does meta watches for 4 games that I advanced, and then Warcry got a meta watch, and Underworlds hasn't had one in quite a while. And we don't know anything new that's coming out for it. So and nobody plays it. So, like, and that's not just me going, oh, nobody plays it. Like, I'm sure someone watching this is going to tell me in the comments, actually, I have a thriving scene for Underworlds in my locality. What I mean is, when you look at the tournament data and the number of people logging competitive games, it's falling off a cliff. Right? So it's not being played at the highest levels of competitive play at the big tournaments and events and things nearly so much. That's what I mean when I say nobody plays it. So no idea what's coming for Underworlds. Slightly suspect what's coming for Underworlds is a big fat nothing. Right? Let's talk about the old world. In March, they fully revealed everything that was coming out for the dwarves. This launch box, a book, a bunch of the made to orders they were going to do, metals and everything else, and then it never materialized. Now, there are rumours for the old world, okay? This has been out and around for ages, the whole release schedule for the first year of the old world. Apparently we're getting High Elves and Chaos in the summer, Wood Elves and Beastmen in the autumn, and the Empire in the winter. The dwarves for the old world are very clearly supposed to be out by now. If you go and look at the Adepticon preview from March, it feels that. And before that, there was a White Dwarf article saying, hey, dwarves are coming next, you know. And it's frustrating because the old world. Sometimes Games Workshop releases a game and they release it and there's hype and they sell a bunch of copies and then you don't really hear about it again, and it's kind of like, oh, that was just like a pump and dump. And it really felt like Old World was going to be a game with staying power. I think bits of Games Workshop certainly set it up to be, no, you know, this is going to be an evergreen game that we support, just like with, you know, the Horus Heresy or whatever, and we've planned out a whole year of releases, and then somewhere they've just stalled up, right? Now, I bought into the Old World when it came out. I still haven't actually played it, because it's a massed battles game, and when am I going to get around to playing it? But I bought most of a Chaos Warriors, like 1,000 points, I think, for the old world, and I devised a paint scheme, and I based them all up on little wooden squares, and I've got an idea of how I'm going to paint them, and they're just waiting in my list of projects for me to have time to paint up an army for a whole army game. But I definitely, I'm old world curious. I will buy the Chaos book when it comes out. I will look with interest to see if they release any new stuff for Chaos Warriors. But it's just frustrating when I know people that want the dwarves. I know that the dwarves, like the ones that are in metal, are still going for silly money on eBay. I was looking at another channel I follow. It's just gone from my head. You know, the Don't Forget to Enjoy Your Hobby for Honest Minis. Yeah, is that the one? I love his stuff. Do you know when you just blank on something you definitely know? Do you know what? I'm gonna find the answer. Honest Minis. I got it right. I did. I want to go and look because I really enjoy his channel. Do you know, it's one of these things. He has about half the number of subscribers that I do, but he puts in so much more effort into all his videos. His thumbnails are absolutely banging, and I just really like unfortunately it doesn't do it on every video, but his Kill Team videos do this weird little doot at the start, which I think is amazing. I should get a little title sting, right? But I don't want to have to pay some guy. I've no talent, and I don't want to pay some guy on Fiverr to make me a little sting. But I know I should have one. Sorry, where did all this come from? I tell you where this came from. I'm going to mention another YouTuber now. It came from Glass Half Dead being like, oh, no YouTubers ever shout out the other YouTubers that they like. So, like, I said that on his Discord. So I'm like, yeah, okay, let's make sure to give Honest Minis yet another plug. Now, he did a video recently, like, absolute mad lad that he is, where he's basically talking about metal dwarves in metal armor, and can you just paint the metal dwarves without undercoat and put like oil washes on them, but have the actual like material metal of the miniature showing through? Absolutely mad video, go and watch it. But the point is, he says in that video, like, oh, I've bought these few miniatures, they're really expensive on eBay. And to get that, the point is still there, I am still talking. This is what Games Workshop are festering by being like, dwarves are coming soon. Perhaps. Like, the people on eBay are profiteering like mad, because what happens is, people who have a dwarf collection that are plugged in to the news and know that the old world stuff is coming eventually, right, will sell their stuff now at a profit with the intention of rebuying their dwarf army when Games Workshop releases it. Because what happens is, and there'll be somebody in the comments who hasn't heard these official announcements somehow and will go, I just heard about this from your video, thank you. And thank you, I'm glad I'm providing a service. But what you've got to realise is, if you're someone like me who absorbs everything that ever comes up on Warcom and follows everything and puts it all into a spreadsheet and works out what's happening, like, most people don't do that, because most people have more than one hobby. Alright? And so you get people who are plugged in, basically taking advantage of people who are not plugged in to what's going on, who know, aha, my collection of metal dwarves is now as valuable as it's ever going to be, because once GW's official reprints come out, it's going to tank in value. So I'll sell those on eBay, I'll sell them, and it's annoying, Games Workshop. The old world stuff needs to get released a little bit faster, please. I think I've said my piece there always round, but please do bring out the dwarves for the old world. Thank you so very much. Right, we need to move on. We got a lot of slides still to go. So we're going to talk about the Horus Heresy. So Horus Heresy. So this is May now. It wasn't previewed in March, so it's not that late. It's a little bit more recent. It was previewed in May, but we know that we're getting a big Mechanicum battle group release and loads of plastic Mechanicum, the Ad Secularis, the text for all's there, there's the tank, there's the robot. A massive release, hotly anticipated by a lot of people. Not out by now. We kind of assumed it would be out by now, maybe, but it's not. We have just heard very recently that we're getting a book to go alongside the Mechanicum stuff, so that's nice. So there'll be a book that goes alongside the boxes, and then eventually there'll be individual releases of the boxes. Basically, there's a lot of stuff coming for the Horus Heresy, including not pictured here. Really nice. I talked about it when it was previewed. Really nice tech priest that she looks amazing. And she's saving in 40k. She's really, really good. The old roadmap. Remember roadmaps? I remember. Do you remember roadmaps? I remember roadmaps. The old roadmap for the Horus Heresy did suggest we were getting a plastic melee weapon set for Space Marines. That seems to have disappeared off a cliff. But yeah, we kind of know what's coming next for Horus Heresy as well. Just a case of where is it? Let's talk about Legions Imperialis. It's Horus Heresy, but in miniature. It's the Cadbury's Miniature Heroes version of Horus Heresy, if you will. Do you know, this should not be a thing in this video, but it's going to be. If you live in the UK, right, there's a certain thing where at Christmas you buy a big tin of chocks for your house, big tin of chocolates, right? And for years and years and years, there were two kinds. There was the Coke and Pepsi of Christmas chocolates. I speak, of course, of Nestle Quality Street my personal favourite, right, and Cadbury's Roses, right, and those were the two, okay. And then at some point in I think it was the turn of the millennium, so like 20 years ago now, I'm showing my age, but at some point they brought out the celebrations and Cadbury's Heroes. And in the minds of a lot of people, they have usurped Roses and Quality Street, and this really upsets me. Because they're not as good. They're not as good, you're wrong. Right? And if your house is a Celebrations house, or even worse, a Cadbury's Miniatures Heroes house, you're basically doing Christmas wrong, and you should stop it. Right? And Legions Imperialis is the Cadbury's Miniatures Heroes version of Horus Heresy. It's just all the things you liked from Horus Heresy, shrunk down to a size that makes them, frankly, just weirdly unappealing, right? Even great friend of the channel, right, great supporter of Tabletop Impulse, Mr. Nightfall, who would come into every single live stream and be like, oh yes, and when are you going to be making lots of content about Legions Imperialis? I'd really like to see it. By the way, I'm your biggest supporter. He's like, well, all right, okay. And then I met Nightfall, and we went to Warhammer World. It wasn't the purpose of the trip, it was a Kill Team tournament, and we looked at, they had the little display thing out, and Nightfall's like, oh, these tiny tanks just aren't very good. They're not. They're deeply unsatisfying. I'm sure somebody out there likes them. Anyway, weird rant aside about Christmas chocolates, a topical rant, if ever there was one, for Check's Notes, the month of July. Anyway, book Devastation of Talan, previewed in May. No sign of that either. It's going to be a common refrain for this video. And it's not just a book. We're supposed to be doing loads of little miniature heroes tanks, right? So the Saber Strike tanks, the Sicarian Arcus, the Sicarian Punisher, the Lemanus Exterminator, the Lemanus Annihilator, the Lemanus Executioner, I'm getting bored reading these, the Lemanus Demolisher, right? Bear in mind, this is all the same tank with a tiny little turret gun that you can't... Lemanus's in big scale are really cool. I've said too much. I need to calm myself down. Termite Assault Drill and the Accelerator Super Heavy tanks. Those last two may already have come out. But all this stuff was previewed at May. Again, not out yet. So that will be coming right in the fullness of time. So at Warcry, so Briar and Bone was previewed in March. Back with Dwarves. And back with like Kill Team Termination, which is released, purchased, and sitting in my pile of shame. Briar and Bone's still not out. So... That's one of the oldest ones up there with the Dwarves. Briar and Bone and the Dwarves are the two where it's like, really, they're not out yet? Not sure what's going on with Warcry, because they seemed like they'd really stepped up the support with it when we got that MetaWatch article. We got the surprise like rebalancing that we talked about of all the Warcry factions. Warcry is in a really good, healthy place now as a game, but... if you're excited to and wanted to buy this, it was previewed in March and it's not out yet for some reason. I feel like this may be why they cancelled the Gen Con preview show, because if they have a preview show in Gen Con and there are still things that were previewed 2 preview shows ago that haven't come out yet, it feels a little weird. So, Briar and Bone. I actually wasn't sure if this had come out, and I just hadn't noticed it. I actually went to Warhammer.com to double check that it hadn't come out. But yeah, no, there's no Briar and Bone. So that's very much what we're expecting. As for what comes after that, I've got no idea. Right, that is the end of the roadmap. We got no more roadmaps. This is going to be another refrain for this video. We got no more roadmaps, but at least we should be getting this. We don't know where it is. Necromunda, wow, like Necromunda, they've been previewing. I mean, have you seen? Has anyone seen? I should have put it on the slide. Really, the Tech Priest, the resin Tech Priest with the Gene Stealer. Like that is a lovely miniature. And then before that, we had a new version of is it Lord Helmar's daughter? Or yeah, but in like a Spira armor. Again, that was amazing. So we started to see now the resin characters that are going to complement, that are going alongside Necromunda, Hive, Secundus. But again, announced in May, yet to make an appearance. I kind of feel like from the steady drip of Hive, Secundus, stuff that this is likely to be one of the next things they release. Right? I feel like this is going to come out before some of the other things that I've had in this presentation for you that we know about already. I just feel like this has got to be soon. I think there's a lot of, like, there's hype about this, but it's not a hype train. It's like a hype submarine. It's bubbling. There's a lot of people going, oh, I don't play Necromunda. I haven't played Necromunda, but it looks good, doesn't it? Like, this stuff looks good. I think there's a lot of people in that kind of, you know, those cursed-looking Gene Stealers, or those Spires, or even the Van Saar, like, it all looks pretty good. Now, it remains to be seen, like, nobody seems to know exactly what this is, right? Is it Necromunda? Obviously, it's Necromunda. What I mean by that is it, like, pretty close to Necromunda, just some new rules? Or is it like some people have said, it's going to be more like a dungeon crawler, and like then it's going to be like, you can use the new stuff in basic Necromunda, but Hive Secundus itself, you know, battle for survival beneath a ruined Hive city. It's actually going to be more like a self-contained game. I haven't heard that explained properly anywhere. But I tell you what, I'm much more likely to be persuaded to get into this than I was to be able to persuade it to be getting into Ash Wastes. This is obviously much cooler. I don't need giant vehicles in my skirmish games unless it's like a boss fight thing where there's like one dreadnought in the middle and we're all trying to kill it. That's kind of cool. But once you add like loads of bikes and stuff, the table is too small. I know you can do rolling roads and other different things to get around it, but this is far more my cup of tea. This looks really cool. So personally, I'm not that enamoured of the new Spires or the Tyranids or the Van Saar, so personally for me, I would need people around me to really want to play it, but it does look really cool, and they're not for me, but I can see why they're cool, all the miniatures in this box. So I think this is what's going to come out next? Don't know. Titanicus is also a dead game. Regret to inform you. Titanicus is in this super weird position where it still exists. And the models aren't going to go anywhere because you can still use them in Legions Imperialis, which is a game they're supporting. It just feels like development has stopped on Titanicus. It sort of feels like it's been parked, right? Now, we thought that was the case for Aeronautica. They said, they're going down to Aeronautica, Heresy only. And then actually they quietly killed it. You can't buy Aeronautica, doesn't have a section on the Games Workshop website anymore. You can't buy any cards, rulebooks, anything for Aeronautica, right? So I kind of think like one day, don't know when, without any warning, Adeptus Titanicus as a discrete game is just going to die. And they won't announce anything because all the miniatures will still be available. They'll just be found in the Legions Imperialis section. They're just going to quietly pull, I guess when the print runs that they've got to sell out, right, the rulebooks, the cards and things like that, they're just going to pull those. I don't know, maybe it comes back, maybe we get a resurgence of it, but it feels like it's a sort of weirdly dead but not dead game because they're going to keep making more of the models, but not making new models for it necessarily, but making more of the models they have for it because they're usable in another game they're actively supporting, right? Yeah. Blood Bowl. There's no way that a person that hadn't smoked a whole load of psychoactive substances was ever going to predict this gnome Blood Bowl team with the snarling badger, with the angry goose, with the two little pointy foxes, with the little garden gnome men like this. I don't know what this is. This is not my Warhammer. This is something out there for someone else who loves this stuff, and I am thrilled they have it. But this is like, what is this? Who is it? I think it's Games Workshop with a low a low amount of investment trying to appeal to a new segment, right? And that's fine. And I think like that's a good thing if it pulls more people into the miniature making hobby, because I genuinely believe the building and painting little tiny soldiers is really good for your mental elves, right? Makes them hush, okay? Good things. So I don't hate them. at all. Like, I'm glad they're there, and I'm glad that Games Workshop is trying new things. And like, hating these is kind of like the people that hated the Tau when the Tau first came out, because it was a transparent attempt to get weebs. They weren't called weebs then, but it was a transparent attempt to get weebs into Warhammer. And now the Tau are just part of 40k, and not say and saying like, oh, those new upstart factions like the Tau makes you sound like somebody's boomer dad. And I'm sure for Blood Bowl it will go the same way, and in 10 years be like, yeah, Glim Darrow Groundhogs, they've always been they're a core part of Blood Bowl. Love them, those guys, brilliant, wonderful, really Warhammer. Where we are right now, kind of bizarre. So you just can't predict. I just don't feel like any sane person can predict Blood Bowl releases. Blood Bowl is a weird little game that exists. They never want to lose the license, right? It's so historically important to Games Workshop, and there's all these people in Spain that are going to keep playing it regardless, so you may as well release stuff for it, and it lets you keep going after all the people that are releasing third-party Blood Bowl stuff on, like, Etsy and stuff, if that's what you wanted to do, if you're a Games Workshop's legal team, and then they just occasionally come out with some mad thing for it. Fine. And one day another Blood Bowl team will come out, and it will catch us all by surprise as well, and it probably won't be to my taste either, because before this we had the weird stuff that was like really like American movie Halloween. Like, I love Warhammer Undead, but they went for real kind of like, oh, let's put some jack-o'-lanterns in there. Like, that's, again, doesn't feel very Warhammer. Feels kind of like Malifaux-y, but hey, that's Blood Bowl. It seems to be their test bed for new and wonderful ideas, which is, if it gets different people into the hobby, I'm all for people building and painting miniatures. Build away miniatures or whatever you want, right? I think the actual physical doing of it is really good for you, so yeah. Speaking of games that they nebulously support, I think largely for not wanting other people to have the license, which is a thing which there will be another Middle-earth miniatures game coming out. I don't want to get into it because I don't really know. Right, apparently it's a thing. Again, weird stuff will come out without warning, and it's like, oh, it almost feels like the Tolkien estate does this thing where it goes, oh, I found this thing scribbled behind a radiator, like scribbled on a napkin behind a radiator, and so we put it in a book for people that like Tolkien stuff, and then later what happens is that the Games Workshop studio goes, oh, these things that don't feature in The Lord of the Rings, but they're in Middle-earth, so they're ours, so we can make miniatures of them. And miniatures come out, and I... Listen, right? Listen. I am an English Catholic nerd. Of course, I adore Tolkien. It's like, I have to. But, like, some of the stuff that comes out, I'm like, who? What? I don't remember this. And, of course, I realise there's a screen grab from the films, right? I'm not actually a films first guy. I read the books. I loved them in school. I've read the Silmarillion. I'm reasonably, like, knowledgeable about my Tolkien. And even I am sometimes like, who's he? And, you know, I'm sure if I went and looked it up in a wiki and I'd be like, oh, yeah, no, I do remember him in this, like, half a scene in this half a book. But I read the Silmarillion in hospital one time, and I have a very tenuous grasp, possibly, on what happens in the Silmarillion. I did read it. Like, I went in unread and came out read, so it's obviously in here somewhere, when I was in, like, year 8. So, but I can say I'm in the club of people who's actually read the Silmarillion. Very biblical. Funny, that. There's a whole separate, like, sub-rant here about how, in case you don't know, like, Tolkien was deeply religious, and also there's a whole argument that, like, if your fantasy universe has a lot of world building, chances are that you are either deeply religious yourself or were brought up in a religious way. And you can look at Tolkien, you can look at C.S. Lewis, and then you look at other things. Now, of course, it doesn't quite hold up because people come after. So you look at someone like George R.R. Martin, you just go, well, he's inspired by Tolkien, so there's not necessarily that same. But originally is a very ordered way, there is a creator kind of way of looking at building a fantasy universe, whereas other fantasy authors just kind of tell stories, and the world building comes around later. How many off-topic rambles can I fit into this video? Anyway, we're nearly done. Weird stuff will come out for Middle-earth. I probably won't be able to identify it, but it will be there. Final thoughts. Right. When you go through it like that, there's a lot of stuff to come out for Games Workshop that we know about. So we're not really crying out for a new preview show. But we really need a roadmap for 40k and Age of Sigmar. Like, I can't help it, Games Workshop. Last year at Warhammer Fest, you gave me roadmaps for all these games. When Leviathan launched, you were like, yeah, here's Leviathan, and also, here's like the next 5 codexes in order, right? We knew before Leviathan landed what the next, 5, 6 codexes were going to be. We knew the year of... I want the year of army books for Age of Sigmar ahead of time, and I don't have it, right? I want to know how much of my brain to invest in the learning the index rules for Soulblight Gravelords. I want to know if they're a this year army book or a next year army book, and I'm not going to be allowed that information because Games Workshop have realised that they can't stick to promises, otherwise we'd have the dwarves for the old world, right? So I don't think we're going to get roadmaps. But that means that for their biggest games, the ones that have been releasing the most consistently and don't have a weird hangover of stuff that's been previewed that hasn't yet come out, we don't have a clue what's going on, apart from, like, Valrak, right? And for all their small games, we have all this stuff they've announced that feels like it's been lost and delayed and thrown behind a bin somewhere. So we're in this weird place where they could now spend a month and a half previewing Age of Sigmar and then just releasing, there's Necromunda, right? And then the next week, like, there's Legions Imperialis, right? And then the next week, like, there's the Mechanicum for Horus. Like, there's flipping the dwarves for the old world. There's Briar and Bone for what? Like, they've got a lot of big tempo releases they have to get out before they need to give us a preview show. It's not like I can't give you a month and a half of releases that Games Workshop need to do, right? Because 1 a week, 4 weeks in a month, it's not that hard. But 40k is this, like, there's like 40k and then there's the rest of Games Workshop. And, as I keep saying as a catchphrase, we're a Kill Team channel, and about Kill Team also we know nothing. Which, personally, is upsetting. So, yeah. On the one hand, it feels like we're desperate for a preview show. On the other hand, when you look at it, we're kind of not desperate for a preview show. What do you think? When's the next preview show going to be? Are we really not going to say anything until Nova Open, which is the back end of August? It's possible. Big thank you to all my members who've been very patient with me while I've been not giving the channel my fullest of attention. Especially to Nightfall and Massive Crit, who are both still subscribed at the highest tier, despite my wobble, which is good. Thank you for that. It means a lot. Please subscribe. I'm on like net -1 subscribers for this month because, I don't know, people haven't liked the content I've been putting out this month. So if you have been liking the content I'm putting out, please subscribe to make the number from a red -1 to a green +1. Just one person has the power to do that. That would make me... No, it would be 2 people, because one person would make it a black 0. 2 people would make it a green +1, so that would be really nice. Thank you for that. Please join the Discord, say hello, enter the post some things to the community showcase. Still time to enter Evil Kill Team, right? You've still got like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 and a bit weeks. All these things and more await you if you simply join the Discord, which is free. You don't need to be a channel member to join the Discord. Simply have to click on the button. The link's in the description. Join the Discord. Hooray. Leave a comment. Press the like button. Do all this and more to spread some joy from you to me. If I've spread any joy from me to you, then we can be like a circuit. A joy circuit. That I can't say wholesome. It's something good. It's a good thing. A tabletop impulse. It's a good thing. Yes. Rambling now. Too hot in my room. Cheery bye. Cheery bye. Bye bye. Goodbye.